right. All right, guys. Today I am with Emily Kloss. Emily and I met, I don't even know how many years has it been. It's been a bunch of
About
years.
a decade or more at
Gotta
this
be getting
point.
close. Yeah, it's gotta be getting close. So
Yeah,
I believe we connected through Great Lakes CrossFit. I think
we
that's where
did.
we first met. And then we've done some
hmm
physical therapy things together, some different work things together over the years. But recently, she has done more with yoga, and she started an online yoga company. And so we wanted to chat a little bit more about her journey with CrossFit into yoga, where that's taken her, why she's gone that way, and some of the benefits that she's seen combining kind of the two aspects of training. So should be a fun
Yeah.
episode. Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Did I miss anything in the introduction?
I don't think so. No. Yeah. CrossFit to yoga. Weird transition that's working
It
out well.
it is kind of a weird transition. So give us the quick synopsis of how that journey took place. Like, how do you go from CrossFit into wanting to do yoga?
Yeah. So I did CrossFit for going on 8 years. And I worked a job at the time that I had to work more hours. My job actually I had changed, and they were asking me to work more hours. So I wasn't able to get into the gym as often. And then the gym actually closed, and that was Great Lakes CrossFit. And because CrossFit was such a humongous part of my life, it was where I spent every single evening. It's where I spent my weekends. I competed. I was a coach. When that kind of went away and it was hard for me to find another gym that I connected to, I felt like very, very lost. It was kind of an identity thing that was gone. And then, CrossFit, obviously, when you're working out that often at that intensity, you've got a lot of endorphins and things like that. And it was just gone. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I did nothing. I just like froze for
I'm
maybe a year and a half, even. It was a long time.
I'm super, like, I've done several of these podcasts now, and this idea of the gym being part of your identity it just comes up so often.
Yeah.
And I think it just speaks to the community and how fitness kind of pulls people together, because
Sure
it's
does.
different gyms, it's different exercise styles. There's obviously benefits and advantages and disadvantages to everything, but that sense of
Mhm.
community, it's a
Mhm.
pretty consistent theme when I talk to people. It's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah. It was
So you're
CrossFit was definitely one of the loves of my life for sure.
yeah. So the other love
um,
of your life, Stefan, your husband, how
yeah.
how did he not get you into jujitsu at that time?
Oh, I want nothing to do with jujitsu. I absolutely nothing. he he always wants me to do jujitsu with him, and it's just that no. Mm-mm.
So yeah, I mean, for those of you that obviously don't know her husband, he's very big into jujitsu. Um, and when you talk
Yeah,
about culture and identity and kind of love for what you're doing, he exudes that when it comes to jujitsu. Like
he
it's
sure
definitely,
does.
yeah. One of these, I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to get him
he's
on a.
like he's so passionate. It's his favorite. It's absolutely his favorite thing to do, and he would love to share it with me. He
Mhm.
would just love, and I want nothing to do with being that close to people. Like the whole touching thing.
Interesting. Yeah,
That's a hard no for me.
interesting. S-
Yeah.
So how do you find, how do you go from, again, this CrossFit high intensity endorphin kind of seeking
Yeah.
fitness model to yoga? How's that transition happen?
So yeah, so I spent, I don't know, it was probably at least a year and a half of just feeling super lost. I was gaining a ton of weight because I wasn't working out at all, and I was still probably eating the same as I was working out 5 days a week. And I was just feeling really, really awful. And I had done yoga a bunch of times, just randomly, mostly for the brunch aspect with my girlfriends afterwards.
Hmm.
But I just decided that I needed to figure out how to get back inside of my body. Like I had to reconnect with myself. I had to figure out how to move my body because it's so important. I mean, we're humans and we need to be moving. So um, I decided to just show up at a yoga class, and it was a yin class. So yin classes are very much where you find a pose and then you just sink into it. They're mostly stretching, they're very restorative. And at the end of that class, we were lying in Shavasana, and Shavasana is the very last pose. And a lot of times it's the hardest pose.
It's my favorite part.
Yeah, it's people's either favorite or they hate it. Like people that can't sit still. Oh, anybody who can't sit still, they just want to get up out of it immediately.
I get so annoyed when people leave a yoga class right like as Shavasana is happening. Like, enjoy the mental clarity that you're about to have and chill and let your brain work for 10 minutes or whatever. It's not 10 minutes, a couple minutes, right?
I generally try to do between 3 and 5 minute Shavasanas. So yeah, not quite 10, but if it was 10, it would be wonderful. I mean, 10's great.
You either fall asleep or your mind is just so clear that whatever you've been thinking about, like it's just boom, boom, it's sharp. At least that's been my experience. But anyway.
Yeah. There's been moments that I've been laying in Shavasana and it feels like almost like I've sunk into the floor and I almost like it's almost a sleep state, but you're still awake. It can be such a cool experience. But the particular one that I'm talking about, the first class back, this yin class that kind of brought me back into my body, I was just laying there in Shavasana, like crying, just like tears rolling down my cheeks. And I was like, I should be here. I belong here in yoga classes now. And it was just like this weird clarity moment. And so I started showing up then mostly to these yin classes for a couple weeks. And then I was like, well, I'm going to dip my toe into some of the more vinyasa style classes, which are a lot more physically demanding. And I started loving those and I was terrible at it. But I just kept going. And then the pandemic started and the studio that I had been going to, they pivoted to online really well. And I lost my job at the same time. And so it was like, all I had to do was yoga every day. And I leaned hard into it. Every day I would do at least one class, maybe sometimes two. And I just kept feeling better and better and better in my body, in my heart, in my mind, and feeling those kind of connections. And by the end of the summer, so 2020, by the end of the summer, the woman who owns the studio told me that she was starting a yoga teacher training and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, well, I don't have a job, so it sounds good.
Timing's right?
And I went for it. Yeah.
What does yoga teacher training, what does that entail?
Oh gosh, it's amazing. So it was 9 months, I believe. It was 200 hours. But it starts all with the asana, which are the poses. So you learn an entire sequence of poses. They call it the skeleton sequence in Baptiste style. Baron Baptiste was kind of the father of this style of yoga. And so you learn, I don't know, there's probably at least 100, if not more, different poses. And you learn all the ins and outs, how to modify them, what body parts you're using, what are the benefits of each one, and then how to kind of move from one pose to the next. You learn all of the, not all because there's so much, but a lot of the theory behind it, a lot of the history behind it. You start to learn some of the like Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is, we're all made up of earth, air, fire, and water. And so you start to learn about how your body's kind of composed and what you need to balance things. What else do we learn? We practiced a lot. We did a lot of yoga, a lot of anatomy.
Yeah. How did you, when I talk to people about yoga, I think one of the hurdles is that, you hear something like that, like we're composed of water and wood and wind and, like, and when I first learned about yoga, right, I was in exercise science and that's kind of when I got introduced to it from a formal level in college. I was kind of like, this is woo woo. Like, I just didn't like I didn't like it. Like it was, I'm here learning about exercise physiology and then you're going to tell me this. Now when initially I was really turned off by that, and I kind of avoided
Mhm.
yoga. And now that I've
Mhm.
had a chance to kind of like, I'm not 20 anymore and I can think for myself. Um, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, they're saying this, but in my, like, I can flip it in my head real quick as far as, yin is restorative and relaxative. Well, it's the parasympathetic nervous system, right? We're taking deep breaths, we're sinking into we're letting it stretch. And so I
Mhm.
have a, let's call it Western understanding of what they're saying. Um,
Mhm.
that Western anatomy didn't exist when they founded yoga, right? But
Right.
I can
Right.
make sense of it. How did you take that as far as like you get into this training? What's your initial impression of that? And then how do you, you're coming from this fitness world,
Uh-huh.
like, was it weird? Was it hard to adapt? Where, how'd
It,
you?
it was weird. It was weird, but then the proof started to be, in the pudding or the sauce or whatever. So yeah, I definitely came in there and I was like, oh, look at me. I've got the best planks. I'm the strongest person here. I can hold this thing forever. But then we started talking about the more woo-woo stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything. This is wild stuff. And when we started to learn like the Ayurveda and we started to learn what your dosha is, and that's so people are either pitta, vata, or kapha. So you're either and this is getting way out there, but my husband and I are complete opposites. Stefan and I. He is a vata, and vatas are made out of water and or air and space. Vatas move around a lot. They are kind of like they don't sleep very well. There's all these different things. And I had Stefan take this quiz and he fit it perfectly. And I was like, okay, that's you. And then I did myself. I'm a pitta. So pittas are made out of fire and water. And if you think about the elements, it starts to kind of make sense. But where I've got a fiery personality, I get mad really easily, but I sleep really well. Um, my skin is hot. I sweat a lot, stuff like that. So then we started to look at ways to like balance those things because everybody's made out of everything, but you have to balance what you are. And when I started doing those things, I started noticing changes in myself. And so that was kind of where that changeover happened, where I was like, oh, yoga is a physical practice and the planks and all that are wonderful, but there's so much more to it that my physical practice can be even better if I take care
Mhm.
of myself in certain ways, eating certain foods. um, in the summertime I need to cool myself off more because I'll get myself being a warmer person, that'll get me super heated up and I get more angry easily. So I don't know, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I'm still just at the very beginning of it as far as the woo-woo stuff is concerned.
Yeah. I
Because
hate to
there's so
say it.
much
I
to
hate to
it.
say woo woo because I don't want to like, uh, it's not meant to be offensive. It's just a different language than I'm trained in, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, I can't, when you say, okay, I'm made of wood and water, I'm like, it doesn't make, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't relate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can't help but then try to figure out, okay, what's the neurologic connection to that, right? Like,
Oh.
if you did, like if you compared that to a person, the test you took to see which, I can't remember the names, but if you took it
Dosha.
to, yeah, do they correlate with like a personality test, like different type A, type B personalities, or introverted, extroverted? Um, are they linked at
um,
all? Do you see those connections?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. So people who are kaphas, they're made of water and earth. And so that's somebody who likes to sleep a lot. They prefer a yin class. They usually have bigger features, like they might have bigger eyes or teeth or something. They might be taller, bigger boned. And then those people are definitely usually more calm. They usually don't have anxiety. They're usually, so some of those more personality traits. And then people who are pittas like me tend to be more outgoing, more outspoken. And then people, vatas like Stefan, tend to have a little bit more anxiety. They're more excited about things. They're ready to go get after it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there are some connections there.
So yeah, to me, I immediately go, all right, well, parasympathetic nervous system and autonomic nervous system are background kind of base thing. You got your parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, Those people are
Mhm.
calmer. They're a little more laid back. Their anxiety is not as high. And then you got your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight mode. And people that are
Mhm.
kind of predominantly in that sympathetic state all the time, they're always up, right? They're always up here. Their
Yeah.
personality's faster. They get anxious quicker because their system's higher, right? And
Right.
the connections there, the similarities there are just, to me, people looked at it from two different dimensions of kind of analyzing the human. But
Uh-huh.
to me, it feels like the modern in I don't know if is it Eastern medicine? I mean, where I don't know the
Yeah.
origination of it,
Indian,
but
Eastern. Yeah.
so you look
Yeah.
at where Eastern medicine kind of came into it, now how Western medicine kind of back around to it, they kind of
Mhm.
end up in the same place. Um,
They do. Yeah.
very different words, very different terminology, different language,
Hmm.
but a lot of similarities. And
Totally.
anytime, in my mind, anytime two different groups kind of find the same conclusions, there's something to that, right? Like
For sure.
attacked it
Yeah.
very differently,
Mhm.
different science, complete different science and theology, but kind of sort of got to the same place. Um,
Yeah. And taking different approaches to heal it too.
yes. So speak to that. What do you mean by that?
So with Ayurveda, a lot of times you're going to try to like eat different foods. So for somebody who's a Vata, they're going to want to eat grounding foods. So like root vegetables and things like that are very, very good for them. Um, so that would be kind of one way of healing. Or also somebody who's like a Pitta or a Vata, they want to work out in a way that's opposite to what they want. So where I want that strong, I want that CrossFit, I want to be high
Mhm.
energy, I want to be sweating a lot, I want it to be fast, I like spin classes. What I really need is more of that yin, really sinking into my body and taking things slower. Where somebody who all they want to do is just lay on their back and stare at the ceiling in Shavasana, they should probably take a vinyasa class and get a little bit sweaty. So you kind of need to balance things out by doing the opposite. And then you'll become a more whole, balanced person, ideally.
Yeah. So the food piece is a little different for me, but like from a workout perspective, makes total
Hmm.
sense. Somewhere in
Hmm.
my history of writing random articles, we talked about like the sympathetic driven person tends to trend towards high intensity classes, right? Because they like it. They like that high energy.
Yeah.
So they're the person you find in a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
And then the person that's more chilled, relaxed, you find them in events that are more relaxed. But really, we probably need to stimulate our body the other direction.
Right.
And again, we're
Right.
speaking the exact same, we're getting to the same endpoint. It's just different
Yep.
language to get there. Um,
Yeah.
the grounding root vegetable thing, does that get into like the concept of grounding, like these earth mats and getting the earth's energy and all that kind of stuff? Is that the
Walking
same
outside
piece?
barefoot.
Yeah. Is
Yep.
that you wear the,
Definitely.
okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I've, I've what do I want to say? I've kind of perused that world. I don't understand it, but I think there's
Yeah.
some things that obviously make sense there. Um,
Yeah.
we know that,
Yeah.
like, if you look at vitamin D synthesis, and you need the sun, and so there's definitely, we're connected to the environment in how
Hmm.
we heal and develop, different vitamins, minerals. But as far as
Hmm.
like plugging a mat into my outlet so that I can convert the earth's energy through this grounding mat, I don't know. What do you think? Have you
I think, I mean, a grounding mat that you're plugging, I don't know, to me, that feels a little bit like somebody selling somebody something. But I do think that there are benefits to literally walking outside in your bare feet and standing with your feet planted in the grass and feeling
agreed?
the energy of the earth connecting to you, or spending time walking in nature, spending time in the woods, taking your headphones off, not listening to a podcast, but actually being there. Yeah, I think that's healing, that's medicine in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I
And whether it's like the actual energies, it's all still pretty new to me also, but I feel it. I've not known anybody to change their entire life because they take walks in the woods every day, but maybe they have also, I don't know.
I'm sure it does exist.
Yeah.
And I can only speak to personal experience here, but like, you give me a few days of just doing nothing but fly fishing, And
Uh-huh.
my outlook on life is different for that window of time, right? Because
Right.
whether it's in energy or it's, I was able to get out of my sympathetic state, or, however you want to say it. Like there's
Yeah.
something to just kind of being a part of just relaxing and listening to nature and all that kind of stuff. It calms your brain somehow or
Mm-hmm.
another.
Yeah.
But
And as a society, we just don't do it enough at all.
no, no, because
People
it
are.
doesn't, uh, it's not, you're not going to make money, right? Like you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to make money to the average person. And even in the fitness industry, right, it's all about aesthetics and weight loss and putting on more muscle. So where does this idea of, the parasympathetic system kicking in, or grounding, however you want to phrase it, how's it
Mm-hmm.
fit in to that marketing that we've all been told, right? It's all more, more,
Right.
more, 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 where that
Right.
conversation's less. um
Yeah.
and I know that you've done some, I don't know, are you still doing any of the, like, the actual health coaching side, or you pretty much transitioned that towards yoga?
Right now, I'm really focusing on the yoga
Mhm.
side of things. I
Mhm.
definitely want to bring my nutrition coaching back into it at some
Yeah.
point, but for right now, I'm just trying to I mean, can you ever master yoga? No, but I'm just trying to master the basics. I'm
Focus,
trying
yeah,
to,
focus on the
yeah,
goals. Yeah, I was just curious if
yeah.
you've, and maybe this comes up even with your yoga stuff. I mean, do you have these conversations with clients, and is that a part of your system at all? The
Not currently. No, no.
Okay,
I've
I
done
was curious.
a lot of my nutrition coaching was more CrossFit based, where I was working on, enhancing performance or helping people to, dial down their macros to figure out exactly how much they should be eating to support their workouts or to lose some weight or whatever their goals were.
Mhm.
Um, but I haven't tapped into you
That
know,
side of it with,
no.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. I feel like the more I learn about nutrition, it's almost like there's two camps of this, like, performance world and build, 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 and then there's this
Uh-huh.
longevity world, which is like caloric restriction, turn off insulin for a while, all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I think it's about, right, it's going to be a balance again of, we need growth, periods of growth, and we need periods where we're not growing. But
Hmm.
it's, again, it's just one of those interesting things.
One of the things that I found to be super interesting with yoga, and doing yoga, is I've been a lifelong dieter. My mom taught me how to diet when I was probably in middle school, and ever since then, I've tried every single diet that there is on earth.
Mhm.
And since really doing a lot of, like, practicing daily, my desire to diet or to eat in a certain way has, like, I don't even think about it anymore. I am continually just like, does this feel good? Is this what my body needs? It's asking more of the questions of, what feels good? What do I need? Am I hungry? Is this the food that's going to satisfy me right now? And then it's more intuitive based, I guess you could say, rather than finding or feeling like I need to follow a strict program. And I've honestly never felt more connected to, like, how I eat or better about it, which is interesting to me.
Why do you think yoga triggered that?
I think because when you're practicing yoga, you have to listen to your body so much. And then you also you're both checking in and checking out in a certain, like, you're in a certain pose and it's difficult. So you're thinking to yourself, do I need to back off of this pose right now? Or do I need to work a little bit harder to get into it deeper? And it's that continual checking in with yourself to know what you need in the moment, that you take that off the mat and it becomes more intuitive, second nature with other things.
Interesting. So
If that
I
makes
mean, almost taking that as like a mental brain training kind of a thing.
sense. Yeah, which is what I've found yoga to do, is the things that you learn on the mat, like speaking nicely to yourself. If you're trying to hold some kind of a balancing pose, if you sit there and curse yourself out and tell yourself that you're a loser, you can't do it, well, you definitely can't. You'll fall all
Mhm.
over the place. But if you try to hold the same pose on the other leg a minute and a half later, and you say nice things to yourself, like, you can do this, you've got that, it's okay that you're wobbling, whatever, it changes everything. And then you might bring that back later on in the day when something's happening and you catch yourself saying, you can't do that, you suck, try,
Mm-hmm.
and instead you remember that, oh no, in my practice, when I made that changeover, I did better. And I see it happening all the time. So it's, yeah, the practice on the mat, I see showing up off the mat all the time.
The mental game all comes back down to the
Mm-hmm.
mental game.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's all
Mm-hmm.
the mental game is all tangled into the physiology of what's happening in your brain at that moment too. So it's
Right.
the more, yeah, it just, the deeper you get into understanding the psychology and physiology, and it's just fascinating slash
It is fascinating.
all of a sudden you're like, man, as much as I think I know, I don't really know much of anything.
Every day,
Oh,
the more you know, the
right.
more I know, the more I'm like, I don't know anything at all.
Exactly.
Which is so cool,
It is.
it's limitless.
There was an old Eric Cressy quote that I think I was just getting out of PT school or something like that, but it was something along the lines of, you know, when you find something out and you realize you've been doing it wrong, like there's this instant like, oh, you're upset that you've been doing something wrong, but there's also this like idea that you've grown, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're still doing this, I think the quote was something along the lines of, if you're still doing what you're doing 5 years ago, then that means you haven't grown, right? You haven't learned anything. So just getting used to that idea of you're going to learn new
Very
stuff, and
true.
you got to be upset with the fact that you don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually this week in my digital yoga studio, I'm studying powerlessness and the power that the ego has, your ego, to keep you powerless. Because the ego tells you that you already know stuff, that you're already there. But the truth is that you can never be there because, like we just said, there's so
Yeah.
much, whatever it is, there's so much deeper, there's so much to know, there's so much to try. And so your ego can really keep you stuck in a place of not growing, which leaves you powerless.
So you mentioned you're doing this as part of your online program. What
Mm-hmm.
How are you incorporating this mental side into the online? Like how is that?
So that's kind of interesting for me because I've lots of yoga teachers come into yoga and they want to teach, you know, um, they always have quotes at the beginning of class or some kind of a theme that they're talking about. And that's actually something that I've personally struggled with because I've come into this from the physical aspect where I've wanted to build strength and flexibility and teach people to do that because that's what I know from my past. So more recently, and in my digital studio, I'm trying to connect the poses and the flows that we're doing to bettering yourself in some way. And actually, I've been using a book called the Yamas and the Niyamas, which is kind of a book of restraints. So like things that you should not do, and then also things that you should do to kind of have a well-balanced, well-rounded life. Um, and so this month I'm studying in my digital studio it's called ahimsa, and that means nonviolence. And so you find nonviolence in a lot of different ways through balance, self-love, um, becoming more powerful, letting go of powerlessness, letting go of the ego. Because all of those things, I mean, violence, for like not violence, like hitting people, but violence is speaking to yourself in a tone that you don't deserve, or acting in a certain way that brings down the feeling in a room. Sometimes if you aren't practicing self-love and your people are angry at themselves or whatever, and you bring that home, and then you're not nice to your kids, or you kick the dog or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so just studying all those things this month, and then each month it'll be a different yama or niyama that I'm going to be studying.
As far as, and so you're focusing on that with the not program, it's not the word,
With
but
the
with the class
practice.
structure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Practice. That's I'm trying to think, are there any other, like I feel yoga is kind of front of mind of connecting that mind body connection
Mm-hmm.
within the practice, right? Within a single session. Are there any
Mm-hmm.
other fitness, like in CrossFit, you got kind of the hero workouts where you kind of take that moment of reflection.
Yeah.
But it's not so much an internal assessment.
No. I mean, anytime that I've ever run in my life, I pray to God that it ends soon, but I don't think that's quite the same thing.
I will say, this mental connection to movement and exercise. Like I was doing running, and I kind of, in my past, I ran a decent amount.
Yeah.
Moderate distance kind of stuff, done a couple half marathons. And I always kind of enjoyed that like struggle piece. And then probably, let's call it 6 months ago, right, I start getting kind of like where I'm running pretty consistently again. And I started to realize like I was kind of wimpy about how quick I wanted to stop. Like I just didn't
Oh.
have that kind of kick to want to push through kind of discomfort a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder how much of that's trained, right? Like, and then how much does it carry over? Like you're saying, how much does that carry over into your real life? Like, you've been getting pushed hard, 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 and then you don't have that desire to kind of kick it up a level.
Right.
But I think it's
You could
interesting that in yoga,
practice it.
I mean, I think that's some of the Wim Hof stuff with like the ice, right? It's a mental test. I think
Mm-hmm.
endurance events are a mental test.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, I think it's interesting that yoga kind of puts it at the, like, you can kind of think about it with these other endeavors, but yoga puts it right in your face. Like we're gonna talk about it and assess
Mm-hmm.
it through the class. Um, I don't know that I've done I don't know, a smattering of yoga classes. I don't know that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people talk like you're saying there's some story or some topic of the class,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know it's been so introspective where you're thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
What
And it can be hard. I mean, throughout a practice, we think about mindfulness and coming back to your intention or whatever that you set at the beginning of practice. So, and we call it a practice, right? So, throughout the 45 minutes, hour, however long it is that you're in a yoga class, you're practicing. So if your intention was to only be kind to yourself throughout the entire practice, then the point is to notice the moments that you're not and bring it back, or
mm,
whatever the intention that the teacher sets is to notice and then bring it back to that intention. So it is that practice piece, which you could do with running or anything else.
right.
If you set an intention at the beginning of it, by the end, what did you get out of it? You can take a look back and see.
Yeah. I find myself going, why can I not do any of this? that's that's my
Practice.
that's my yoga experience, right? Like, why am I so bad at this?
Yeah,
Or
but that's not a thing. There's
no,
no
I
good or
know. Yeah,
bad.
sure. And then I find myself going, why am I sweating so much? I'm not even moving. Like that's the other part of it. That's always
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
I interrupted you.
That's okay. It's gone.
It's gone. So why online? Like why? I mean, I think there's advantages and disadvantages to online. Why did you decide to go that route?
Yeah, I'm not exclusively online. I do teach in person 5 times a week. So I do teach in person. At some point, I may end up opening a studio. That is a dream of mine. I think current climate just makes it difficult as a new teacher to open anything. But beyond that, I because of my experience with COVID shutting everything down and me taking my practice online, that's really where I found my love for yoga. And it's what kept me consistently doing it every single day. So I don't, my online studio isn't something that I think people should only be doing. I think that, anybody who practices yoga should also be taking in-person classes because there is magic in those classes. But if you want to have a consistent practice, if you want to really dig in, if you really want to see what you're made of, then doing it every day is a discipline that I want to help people with. So online can just bring it home. It can make it happen at any point in time. And that's why I wanted to do it online.
That's very interesting. And I've honestly not done any virtual yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I think my experience, and this is where your personal bias always plays in. When I first was introduced to yoga, it was in college, right? And we were in like a gym, an aerobic studio kind of setting, and it was kind of woo woo. We didn't really do much, and I was like, "This is dumb," right? It was everything I
Yeah.
thought. It was everything that like kind of those negative connotations that I kind of brought to the class, and then it was every one of those things. And then when I went to my first, like I went to a yoga studio play, and then was in that setting, was in that atmosphere, with just being in that group, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is why people do yoga, right? Because
Yeah.
you could kind of, whether it's the energy of the room or whatever, but you were immersed in it, and it it
Mm-hmm.
was it was a different feeling altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And so my initial response to like online yoga is like, you're missing that whole environmental piece. Like it's being in that room, and the whether it's the movements or the sounds, or I don't know, the temperature. It's interesting.
Yeah, there is 100%. And sometimes in a yoga class, everybody's breath syncs up and it
Hmm.
sounds like there's an ocean coming through the room. And it's one of the most powerful, exciting things. Like I have goosebumps talking about it. And you definitely do miss that when you do that at home, which is why I would never want people to stop practicing in person. But when you are at home, you can take it to more a meditative spot. There is nobody else in the room. It's all about you. It's 100% about you. And just showing up on your mat for yourself is a discipline. Showing up for yourself, period, is something that most people don't do at all. So whether it's 5 minutes of movement or 60 minutes of movement by yourself at home is just a commitment that will I believe it'll change people's lives.
Yeah. Use that word
Mm-hmm.
discipline. And that was kind of when you were talking about the ability to do it every day and check in with yourself every day, it
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of just that discipline aspect of that. And
Yeah.
um, I talk with Phil Weigel all the time at CrossFit CLE, and he did the Murph everyday thing. And so the Murph workout,
Murph every day.
he did Murph every day for a year.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So if you're not familiar with Murph, it's wearing a 20-pound vest, run a mile, 300 body weight squats, 200 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, run another mile. And so he did at least one Murph every day for an entire year.
That's incredible.
And and when he first told me he was going to do this, I'm like, this is stupid, right? Why are you doing this?
Uh-huh.
And the conversation began to come about discipline, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I have the discipline to do it every day, make time to do it every day? And when you talk with him, like the things he learned from that, uh, you can just tell that there was a lot of value to that to him. And I don't think everybody should or needs to do a Murph every day, but I like
Yeah.
what you're saying, right? Like it's a restorative, it's a meditative kind of state,
Yeah.
that you can kind of visit every day. That's super interesting. It's something that I probably need to check in on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's showing up for 5 minutes to just do a forward fold, you showed up for yourself for 5 minutes and did a forward fold. Like that's a great thing that you might not have done otherwise. And then obviously there's more physical benefits the longer you do a practice. But then there's also the mental, like sometimes it's sitting down and just doing a meditation, which is so difficult. And something that I want to learn more about, meditation. But yeah, all of it is meditative. Even doing the Murph, I'm sure, is meditative in some ways.
Yeah, he would talk about that, and I think there's a lot of meditation is something that I think I will explore at some point.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to podcasts like what's his name, Tim Ferriss, it's one of like the biggest things when he talks to all these successful people, meditation is one of the things that they all do. Like it's a consistent
Mm-hmm.
practice for all of these highly successful people. Um, and I'm currently of the mindset like I want to do something while I'm checking out a little bit. Like I'll tie flies or I'll do some stretching kind of stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's something I think I need to explore personally, as far as
Mm.
sitting still for a long time is challenging.
Oh, 100% challenging. It's one of
Yeah,
the most challenging things.
right. Which is why people skip Shavasana.
Totally, 100%. Or they do crazy things. I mean, I see people all the time. I'm like, what are you doing right now?
What do you mean?
We're laying down. Like, people do headstands. They'll just
During
start doing it during Shavasana.
Hmm.
Or they'll roll around on. I mean, people do all kinds of stuff. And it's fine. Like, if that's what they want to do, I'm not mad at it. But it's so hard, is the point, to like just sit and be.
Yeah, it's
So
a
hard.
challenge. I saw a
Mm-hmm.
thing from Ido Portal. You know that name?
No.
He's out of Israel. He's like a capoeira movement expert, and he's got
Oh,
this,
cool.
I forget, it's like the movement, I can't think of the name of it anymore. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he's all about movement, right? Yeah, I mean, when you talk about watching somebody move, it's incredible. And then I think it was last year I saw a thing where he's now trying to sit and stare at a ceiling for 30 minutes, because he said something along the lines of, it's the hardest mental challenge I've had, is just to sit and stare at the ceiling.
It's so hard.
It
It's
is,
so hard. Being
because you're,
still is the hardest thing.
and I think we're conditioned to avoid that, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
but I think it's
Yeah.
different from, you know, checking out and watching Netflix for 30 minutes is not the same as kind of just being still with your own thoughts for 30 minutes. Like, it's not the same checkout. But
Not even a little. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know how that's explainable, or probably need a psychologist or somebody a heck of a lot smarter than myself to figure that one out. But there's something
Yeah.
different. Where your
Well,
mind
it keeps
goes.
you busy. Your mind is busy when you're watching Netflix, or when you're checking your phone, or when you're
Mm-hmm.
reading something or whatever, even if you're not moving.
Right,
But
it's a
being alone with
distraction.
your own intrusive thoughts. And, we always say, and I say when I'm teaching yoga, is like, if a thought comes in, notice it, and then let it go. Tell it
That's
that
interesting.
we'll be back, but right
Mm-hmm.
now I'm not thinking about you. And it can be done. I mean, they keep coming, then the next thought, and then the next thought. But the point is to notice it and say, we'll be back later. I'm
Yeah,
doing this right now.
I think, right, it's not that it's bad that those things come in, right? But if you know what to do with them, right, then that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. All right, so this was fun. I want to start to
Mhm.
wrap up. What do you think, what are the goals for your online program? Like, where do you want to see it go, and what do you think is going to be happening, if we had this conversation again next year? What do you think will be different, or what do you hope that's happening this time next year?
Yeah. I really want it to become more of a community. I host my studio on Patreon. And so there's opportunities for people to talk to me through comments, and then also to other students. I did my very first live online class last week. So I definitely want to be doing more of those, and bringing the people that are taking my recorded classes and bringing them together. I'd like to be doing more workshop kind of things. I really like visioning and doing vision boards. I'm big on goal setting and self-improvement and reading books and stuff like that. So I want to bring all that kind of stuff, even if I do a book club. I want it to really feel like a studio that you would go to,
Mm-hmm.
but just online. I wanted to have all the elements and aspects of things that people love about an actual yoga studio.
Right, and kind of as we started, right, that feeling of community, that feeling of culture and belonging to, if it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
successful, it has to have that. I think if it's
Mm-hmm.
from a fitness standpoint, has to somehow
Yeah.
tie in. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm
Yeah.
super excited to see where this all leads you. Like I said,
Thanks.
I've known you and Stefan for some time, and um, you've always been so passionate about health and fitness and wellness, and so I'm excited to see you go down this journey. And
Yeah.
wherever it ends up, it ends up. But it's really cool to kind of see you taking that challenge. I
Thank
think,
you. I've never felt more aligned in my life. Like, I
yeah,
definitely feel like I'm doing the right thing. It's just making it happen, keeping one foot in front of the other, because that's the hard part.
it really is. And we've talked about this in other times. Like, just that challenge of you're putting in all this work, and then you got to kind of just trust the process. And
Right.
whether it's a business or it's your own personal health journey, right? Like trusting the process is tough when you don't see that like instantaneous change, which we all
Mm-hmm.
want. But
It's
it's a
just like a
journey.
yoga practice. You got to show up every day for it.
Yeah.
Keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
think that's a good place to wrap up. Emily, where can people find more about you and your online program?
Yeah. So my website and my social media handle is Eat, Play, Be Well. So eatplaybewell.com or at Eat Play Be Well on Instagram. Those are the best ways to find me. I send out a newsletter once a week that includes, well, it's a newsletter on Wednesdays, and then I also send out a mantra on Mondays, just giving people a little bit of food for thought, something to take you through the week, hopefully some self-improvement.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Check her out on Instagram. There's all kinds of great content on there. We'll post all that
Thanks.
stuff in the on the website and in the show notes. So,
Thank
all
you.
right, Emily. Thanks. This was fun. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
again soon. All right.
All right.
See
Take
you.
care.
Mhm.
Bye.
Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let us know in the comments below what you liked, what you disliked, what you'd like to hear more of, and any questions we can help answer. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.